Hi, this is Veronica Cartwright, and you're listening to You Might Know Her From with Anne and Damien.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of You Might Know Her From
with Anne and Damien.
I'm Damien.
I'm Anne, and if you're new to us, welcome. Happy Pride Month. We are in the full twist of it right now, and if you're not familiar with the show, this is a show where Damien and I, best friends, queer collaborators, actress sexuals, we shoot the shit with each other and sandwich each of those conversations with an interview with an actress. This month, we have a very delectable episode, but Damien, I wanted to see if you had heard about something that I'm very excited that I haven't seen yet, and that is the Liza Minnelli documentary.
I have not seen it.
I haven't seen it. I'm so excited about it. I can't believe we're actually getting access to Liza. I'm sure it'll be a puff piece and not like a hard-hitting docudrama, but I'm extremely excited, and I thought it was never going to happen.
When is it available?
I think it premiered like at the Tribeca Film Festival, and I think it's going to be out soon. If not, like, I'll check because I'm very excited to see it. And like, honestly, I feel like New York died when Liza Minnelli left, but I feel glad that she's being taken care of by Michael Feinstein in Los Angeles. Like, I think he makes sure everything, like the bills are all paid and like she's good to go.
I've been thinking a lot about Nepo babies, and I feel like it's sad that Judy Garland's legacy ends with Liza. Not to say Lorna does have grandchildren. I mean, there are grandchildren by way of Lorna, but they're not performers. And I feel like, you know, like if Lorna had a daughter who was like a dancer and a singer, I think we would be all in.
Right. I mean, 1,000% true. I don't know where that said daughter is. She was featured on an album once, but other than that, I don't know that she is. Is she in the
found
biz?
her Instagram once, but maybe I'm thinking of Lucille Ball's granddaughter, whose Instagram I also found for sure.
Oh my God. I think that exists in some DM from you a long time ago, but I need you to freshen that up for me because like, what is she doing?
They're not in the industry, which I think I'm like also into, like living regular lives.
Yeah.
It just feels like if you were the granddaughter of Judy Garland, that you would be like, hey, I can sing on pitch a little bit. Let's make me a star.
Call me a Gunkwit Playhouse. Like, I feel I would also be phoning those things in. I find it surprising that a large number of people don't remember that, or don't know maybe even that Liza is Judy's daughter. And to her testament, I mean, honestly, can we think of anybody with a higher, like, is there anyone with a higher pedigree than Liza Minnelli? And like, is there anyone we think that would have that legacy moving forward? Like, is it Blue Ivy? Is like, who could potentially reach that pinnacle? Because you have to be sort of a century worth of an icon in order to have a spawn that's going to be someone that we're interested in.
I think Blue Ivy is the closest we have, right? And I think that obviously it's only time will tell, but she is positioned as the child of not only one famous person, but two, who is like next level famous. I mean, Barbra Streisand's son, it didn't happen, you know?
Didn't happen. He's still trying. He did put out an EDM album.
It wasn't terrible. I'm going to say this.
It really was a lot better and a very big swerve for Jason Gould. But good for him. Happy Pride to you, Jason Gould.
I saw a documentary called This House Is Not a Disco about Fire Island at the opening of New Fest. And there was, someone was being interviewed in it, and they were like, you know, Barbra Streisand's son has been out here. And it made me laugh. It was like an elder gay, and that was like an item that they cited. They were like, you know, Montgomery Clift used to come out here back in the day, and, you know, Barbra Streisand's son has been out here.
As if he's on the same tier. They don't even know his name.
Oh, man.
It makes me happy. For the record, the documentary is premiered this week at the Tribeca Film Festival, and I guess it will be out after that. It's called Liza, a truly terrific, absolutely true story, which I guess is a play on the fact that, like, Liza has massaged the facts as the years have gone on, and I do respect it. As somebody that loves old Hollywood, I feel like they realized that the story being told about Judy was that she had this like very sad and tragic life. And they were like, I think our job as her kid is to counteract that narrative in the media. So they keep it pretty light when they talk about dear old mom and dad.
Yeah, which I understand. Like, I also like appreciate that Liza is like lives in the like, she is so old Hollywood that even though I feel like sometimes she's not being honest, I like appreciate the pieces that she gives us, you know?
Me too. And I feel like my memories, I saw Liza a few times in New York City, and I feel like the one that was the last time I saw her, I was with our friends Brenna and Sean, and we were seeing Funny Girl at a screening on 59th Street in that little movie house right there. Not the Paris. It was like this like side theater, and they were doing an Academy screening of Funny Girl. And Liza Minnelli was in the lobby smoking cigarettes the entire time inside the lobby, and nobody wanted to tell her like, you can't smoke here because you're indoors. And like she was literally right by the door, but no one would force her out. So she was just smoking in her little apple cap and her palazzo pants, smoking a cigarette the entire time. And we're like, is she doing the intro? Why is she here for the Funny Girl screening? Is Barbara here? What's happening? She never came out. She never materialized. I have no idea why she was in the lobby. But like, that's the New York that I love. And I'm glad that some of it still exists.
I love New York. And I love New York in the summer, even though it's disgusting and there are rats running amok. I'm so glad to live in this city where, you know, we can be queer as can be, where Liza Minnelli smokes cigarettes indoors, where me and you can clench hands because I see Andrea McArdle walking on 9th Avenue on a regular, you know, summer eve. Do you remember that?
Of course I could. I understood that the connection was cigarettes.
The connection also was that she has been in my brain since we started to bring up children of famous people, because the last time we had a very similar conversation to this, somehow Alexis, what's the daughter's name?
Calahoff.
Andrew McArdle's daughter somehow came up, and it was like, we were talking about like Barbara Streisand, Liza Minnelli, and like Beyonce and Diana Ross, and I was like, but Andrew McArdle's daughter. It's like real left turn. Everyone was like, Andrew McArdle, if you're listening, that's what you mean to us.
We have 5 topics of discussion here on You Might Know Her From. Andrea McArdle is one. I have to say that we have very big Pride news, which is that we are going to be talking about lesbianism and New York City history on the Patreon with a very special guest interview with Barry Kreinick, who wrote a play called The Queen of 14th Street about Eva Le Gallienne. And we talked about her on the Kate Burton episode. She's like a world famous lady of the American theater and very like out lesbian, living her best life for many years, played Peter Pan, of course, was the White Queen in Alice in Wonderland, of course. So if you're interested in getting some good gay gossip this June, find us on the Patreon with that episode with Barry. It's going to be great.
I'm so excited.
We dove deep on Eva Le Gallienne and like, wow, what a fucking life. Also, I found out that the theater that she built in New York City was the 14th Street Theater. And I was like, what part of 14th Street was it on? Turns out it's a door down from the McBurney YMCA with the pool on 14th Street, where I go regularly, and it made me so happy. I feel like I remember reading that Ethel Merman's apartment was on 33rd Street in Astoria. That's where she was born and grew up, and it was like 2 blocks from where I lived in Queens. Of course, everything's been raised, but it's nice to know that these ghosts exist in New York City.
Completely. And also she died in 1991. And when we started to do research, I sort of was like, oh, this is like forever ago. This is like Mary Pickford's in her films. Yeah. And it was like Mary Pickford like scratched part of my brain that I didn't know need to be scratched, where I was like, I like know Mary Pickford. I guess because she's like, why do we know her? Like, she's like...
Okay, so I didn't even respond to that, but I remember, like, I think the reason I know Mary Pickford is because she's related. Like, was Mary Pickford the one that was in the relationship with William Randolph Hearst? And then there's that movie, The Cat's Meow, that is about Marion... Or no, that's Marion Davies. Not Mary Pickford, right? That's Marion Davies, not Mary Pickford. Mary Pickford was a silent star,
yeah,
but I think I'm conflating her. Did she, like, disappear? Did Mary Pickford disappear?
No, you're thinking of the lady who committed suicide on the Hollywood sign, right?
Wait, I don't remember who that is.
Peg something, right?
I don't know, Damien. I don't know this story.
Are you, guys, folks, are you following what we're giving you right now? This is how we are bristling at Pride. Even the guillotine. She is just like really was giving me everything that I needed, and I really couldn't believe that she died in 1991. So then it somehow made me feel like, even though 1991 is long ago, it's still within our lifetime and doesn't feel as like old as like when we were born. And then I was just thinking that, like, she is closer to us than I would have thought, and then therefore there are, like, these silent film stars that are closer to us than I thought too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense, and I think there's, like, time becomes tighter as you get older somehow, because, like, when you were 20, like, let's say when I was 15, reading about the 1950s felt like ages and ages ago, despite the fact that it was only 40 years prior. And now that I'm 40, 1950 seems so much closer, even though it's like 75 years ago or 70 years ago, whatever. Like, the distance seems less as you get older because you start to have, like, a better concept of time. And, you know, it's like those dumb memes that are always like, we're further away from Clueless now than blah, and you're like, oh, I don't want to know. I don't want to think about it, because time is fucked up. But I think that now too is that, like, the silent era, which felt like another universe when I was a kid watching movies growing up, now somehow seems so much closer when you realize it was like 100 years ago. That's not that long ago, actually.
We would have been silent film stars who were from vaudeville, and we I would not have made it to the talkies.
I would have tried, but they would have been like, you're too gay for this. I might have had a career along the lines of, like, a Mary Wicks.
Yeah, you would have.
Could have seen myself in, like, a. I would have been like.
You would have been
Wicks,
like, what's her name? Who's the woman who plays Katie, the Irish maid in Meet Me in St. Louis?
Wait, why can't I say her name
She's
right now?
gay.
Marjorie Main.
Yeah,
Marjorie Main.
She's in a relationship with Spring Byington in real life. Famous lesbians. Yes. So it's all full circle.
I think that would have been my best chance at playing anything in the talkies. I would have been like a chambermaid. I would have been the help. Yes, exactly. You knew
the housekeeper in a like kitchen sink dramedy where you were like have to use an accent.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I would have like a tight bun, and they wouldn't put any makeup on me. They'd be like, she's perfect for this. She really looks downstairs material.
Folks, look up Eva Gallante and say her name.
Gallante, Eva Le Gallienne. I think she said
Gallienne.
In France, they said Gallienne, and I think in America they say Gallienne.
So look her up and then join us on the Patreon. We're very excited for you to hear that. And I think without further ado, I mean, we're so happy to have this project. I think that in some ways this is like a representation of our own like queer identity, weirdness, the things that, you know, excite us artistically, and the women who, you know, get to be at the forefront or on the sides of these stories that we really want to bring to you. So thank you for being with us for the long run, or if you're new to the show, then thank you for joining us today, and happy Pride to you. We hope that you're having whatever kind of Pride you need it to be, and that, you know, if nothing else, you have Anne and Damien as your biggest supporters and allies, and we love you, and we hope you enjoy this episode right now.
You might know her from Alien,
The Witches of Eastwick,
The Birds,
The Children's Hour,
Will and Grace,
The Right Stuff,
Invasion of the Body Snatchers,
Inserts,
and The X-Files.
Veronica Cartwright, thank you so much for being on You Might Know Her From. This is a huge day for us, and we have a lot to get into, but we thought it was really important to start this interview with a laundry list for our listeners. Since you stole scenes from Michelle Pfeiffer, Susan Sarandon, and Cher in The Witches of Eastwick, you played Jack's mother on Will and Grace, you sing Jerry Herman in Scary Movie 2, you are friends with the legendary Coco Peru, you played a repressed lesbian in StraightJacket, a bisexual in Sparkler, not to mention you were a child star who worked with Alfred Hitchcock and Jessica Tandy in The Birds, appeared in lesbian classics like The Children's Hour and Alien, and are featured on the cover of the Scissor Sisters album, Ta-Da! Veronica Cartwright, do you understand that you are a bona fide queer icon?
Well, thank you very much. I didn't know I was bona fide. I knew that I was enjoyed by a lot of the LGBT group. But I didn't know I was a bona fide.
Yeah, you're an icon. Absolutely. I mean, we knew the things. We knew the big things. But then it was like the more we started, it was like a Russian doll of just opening up, and it was like more and more and more.
Yeah, I'm surprised you got the album cover for the Scissor Sisters. Wasn't that fantastic?
Incredible.
I mean, Jake Spears he called me up, and on my home line, And I thought I had a home line that was, supposed to be just exclusive, which it wasn't. I mean, he called up and he goes, "Hi, Veronica Cartwright." I said, "Yes." He goes, "Don't think I'm weird or anything, but this is Shakespeare's and I want you to be on the cover of my Scissor Sisters album." I said, "How did you get this number?" He says, "I just looked it up in the yellow pages or the pages, on whatever." Yeah. So I said, "Well, I pay money each month for that not to happen, but well, thanks for letting me know." I mean, I guess I paid it for years and they didn't do anything. So
I know we're going to get to it, but we must know that you probably have a lot of enthusiastic fans, so privacy is probably key.
So anyway, it was so much fun. It was so great doing that. They flew me into New York and stuck me in all these fabulous clothes and Louboutins and all sorts of fabulous things. It was great. And then I went to London for a convention, and there it was as you came out of the airport, 3-dimensional, huge, big poster. Unbelievable. It was fantastic.
It's so cool.
It was very cool.
As we were digging, Damien and I are both queer, and we're always looking for the queer in for the actors that we interview. So I was searching, and someone online recently stated that your character in Alien Lambert is, quote unquote, canonically trans, meaning in the James Cameron's Aliens, the sequel, you see Lambert's bio flash up and it's like, oh, they transitioned from male to female. Is that something that you knew about? Is that like a James Cameron add-on? What's the deal there?
That was a James Cameron add-on because when we did it, I believe it was 17 years before, wasn't it? Or at least 13 years before he did it. Mm-hmm. No, I mean, we weren't. We were just sort of all equal. And I sort of thought I was having an affair with Yaphet Kotto. I mean, because he kept giving little digs and stuff like that. So
yeah, and you guys have such a good rapport.
Yeah, so that's what I thought that was going on. I think it was years later that Cameron did that and put it on the post. I mean, I hadn't thought of it, and I didn't realize. I mean, we were supposed to, they shaved my head. I mean, Sigourney wouldn't do hers, so I got stuck with having that crew cut.
Is that right? That originally, they wanted Ripley to have it, and they're like, "Oh, she won't do it." Oh my god!
Yeah, she wouldn't do it, so I got stuck with it, and it took them 6 hours to do that. He kept saying, "Oh, cut it a little. Let's see what this looks like." And then he'd come in, no, it needs to, and finally he comes in, and the big thing in those days at that period of time was having these spike things coming out, spikes.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you could gel it up like that. I mean, it was cut 1 inch or 1.5 inches all over my head, and then they just sort of gelled it. But the weird thing was we originally had another actor, John Finch, who was playing the part that John Hurt eventually played. Mm-hmm. And he had just gotten out of the hospital from having pneumonia. And there was, of course, really loved working with beeswax and smoke. Always smoke. Tons of smoke. So John came in and we shot the first day, and he was back in the hospital that night. So then the next day, John Hurt was there, and we looked like clones of each other. I mean, our skin was the same. We both had freckles. We had that hair. I mean, it was ridiculous. So, but they wanted us all to be when we were in those sleeping beds, all to be equal, which we were all lying there and with just our boxers on. And they realized they lost 6 countries if Sigourney's and my nipples showed. So they stuck white tape around us like this. Well, try and get that off after a few hours of lying in the thing. Oh my God, it was just awful. So how could you possibly be equal if the women were pulled out? They should have put the white tape around the guys as well, I think.
I agree. I mean, it seems a little bit like it would have been a claustrophobic, gory nightmare because you all are sort of shoved in there together. Did you feel like the crew formed some sort of camaraderie since it was sort of this confined set?
Well, yeah, confined. Yeah, well, we were supposed to be like truckers in space. I mean, we'd
Yeah.
been
Right.
out there a really long time. Yeah, there was definitely a camaraderie that happened. And the way the set was built, it was all connected. So you like walked on, you were in the engine room, but then you had to walk through the engine room and down the corridor to get to the health bay or the clinic area. And then you had to go further to get into the kitchen. Every single day you would be doing these weaves through the corridors and stuff because that particular set was all connected. So it was very claustrophobic. And then later on, of course, when things started to heat up, we were sprayed down with glycerin every day because the air conditioning was supposed to have broken down and stuff like that. And that was really attractive. I mean, every bit of dirt just sort of clung to you. You were, oh my God. Anyway, when I just finished doing that and to come back, to have that crew cut, I got back to the States. Nobody had that hair. So it was a little difficult to get a job. Then Liza Minnelli cut hers all off, and then it became the big craze to have your hair
Right.
like that.
Right. So
And I used to wear ties, and then she was wearing ties in this short hair. I used to wear ties, my dad's school ties. And as actually, I mean, I would go on interviews when I was in the States, and they said, doesn't she have any normal clothes? I mean, I used to shop at the thrift shops and all of that stuff. And I would always go in with all these funky looking things. Anyway,
Liza Minnelli took your style.
she took my style and made it famous.
So the chest burster scene is obviously like one of the most famous in all of cinema. The story goes that like the cast had seen the puppet and you knew it was going to come through the chest, but you weren't told that there were going to be the squibs, and then like you were surprised by the sprays of blood. Is that true? Like they really just didn't tell you?
Well, only Sigourney and I saw the original puppet because we had to
Okay.
play a scene that was after it. And it wasn't finished, but they took us down so that we could see the little penis guy, And then the guys, the prop department, were so thrilled because they said, oh, it's going to breathe, and then its mouth is going to go in and out. And they were building it, and they were just so excited. But at least we had an idea of what it was we were even talking about. So we were left upstairs for hours while they were packing John in his false chest and sticking offal in there. He was stuffed with all sorts of guts and horrible things. And then they called us down. Well, everything was wrapped in plastic. They were wearing raincoats. And there were big buckets of offal that when you walked in there, you gagged. Oh, it's just hideous. And then you walk in, and of course there were 4 cameras so they could get all of our reactions on a one take. So when they started doing it, they had cut John's shirt, made incisions so that the puppet could come through. And, of course, we were just all fascinated watching this whole thing. And then Ridley shouts, cut, which brought the anxiety up even more so that they could go in, so that they could cut the I'm sure he figured this all out. Cut the T-shirt a little more so it would be easier for the puppet to go through. So I just became so fascinated watching them. I leaned right into a blood jet. And it hit me square in the face, and that, oh my God, and backing up. My legs hit that banquette. I flipped upside down. My cowboy boots were above. And I realized they were still shooting. So I rolled over. I ran back in. I mean, oh my God. It was insane.
Yeah.
I mean, it was in the script that the thing comes out, but we had no idea how it was going to actually end up looking, and that I would get sprayed with blood.
Honestly, the scene is clearly iconic, but honestly, watching it again for the first time in a couple of years, I was like, this movie is gay without being gay, and I love it. There is just, as you said, there's like an equality amongst the crew and the costumes and the entire vibe. And it's like you and Ripley, and towards the end, I feel like it holds up really well.
Well, I was the only one who knew anything. I told them that something, let's get out of here, but nobody listened to me. Gee.
It was a mess.
It was like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I knew how to stay away from being that way, but
Okay, can we talk about that? Because that, I have to say, was the first time I had seen that film, and I watched it for research for you, and it actually blew me away. So for those that haven't seen this remake from the original 1950s movie, this is the 1970s sci-fi noir directed by Philip Kaufman, has like all of this incredible cinematography and all of these great practical effects. You are, I think we can establish at this point, like a great actor who is often tasked with bringing pathos to genre films. Do you think that reputation started with Body Snatchers, where you play this sort of like kooky, crunchy woman who's married to Jeff Goldblum and you run this like mud bathhouse? Or do you think it was really Alien that sort of cemented that for you? Because I have to say, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, if you haven't seen it, please go out and watch it. It's incredible.
Well, actually, that was before Alien.
Yeah.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers was before Alien. And it was interesting because I had done a movie called Going South with Jack Nicholson. Mm-hmm. But I had worked all the way up. I'd done all sorts of different things. And then I went through a period of time where I wasn't getting any work. So I decided, because I'm British, I would go and move over to England for a year and see what I could possibly do. And when I got over there, I auditioned for Rocky Horror Show. But I wanted to play Magenta. And, of course, Magenta had just been cast, so I had to audition for Janet. But my voice isn't, I'm an alto. I am not a high soprano.
Yeah. We love an alto here. We love an alto.
And so they gave me a glass of wine at the audition to see if I could loosen up. I mean, these Brits are hysterical. So I didn't get Rocky Horror Show, but what I did get was a request if I would bother to do Oh Calcutta.
Right, they were like, you can get naked in this.
So I went down and checked out Oh Calcutta, and I thought, no, this really isn't for me. But I hung in there, and I eventually, just before I left, I auditioned for a movie called Inserts with Richard Dreyfuss. And I ended up getting that. And if you haven't seen it, it's a wonderful movie. Bob Hoskins' first movie. And Richard Dreyfuss plays this director who it's supposed to be during the time of Clark Gable and all that. And he wanted to do things that he wanted to do. He was sort of like, but they wouldn't let him. So he decided he was going to shoot porno films with dignity. So it was X-rated. It was Jessica Harper and Bob Hoskins, Stephen Davies, Richard Dreyfuss, and myself. That was the entire group of the movies. And
Veronica, I have to tell you, can I insert this for just a second? Mm-hmm. That I actually watched the movie and I had no concept of it prior to this past week. And it is a game changer. I'd never seen you do anything like that in the breadth of your career. And you're so good in it. You play this like sort of heroin addicted junkie. Yeah. Like a junkie porn star, but also it's really funny and also dark. The movie is available on Vudu to rent. It's otherwise hard to find, but it is so good. Was that like your transition movie, like you were saying?
Yeah,
that
it was like
helped you be seen in a new light
for a long time, and then I ended up getting that, and we shot it like a play. We rehearsed for 3 weeks, and we shot the whole movie in 14 days. And we shot it chronologically. So it was just such a wonderful experience. And it was the oddest thing because when I got the script, I kept trying to do it in a normal voice. By the time I was finished, I was just yes. And there was nothing I could do about it. And I went in, they had me back a couple of times, and then they had me read with Richard Dreyfuss. So Richard and I went off and we prepared a scene and then we did it for the producers. And it was great. I mean, I got that and it was just an incredible experience. And then I came back home to Los Angeles. And then I had an interview to meet Jack Nicholson for Going South. So I go to Paramount Studios and Jack comes out and he goes, "Hi, Jack." Like, yeah, sure. Okay. And of course, you'd heard all these stories about Jack and more, and, and he goes, "Come back to the room." I said, "Okay." And as I'm walking down the hall, Paramount the old buildings had very narrow hallways. So as I'm walking down the hall, he says, "I loved you" in inserts. At which point, I guess I turned bright red. And then he goes, "I love a woman who blushes." I thought, oh my God, it was just incredible. Anyway, we sat, we talked, and then he put my picture on the wall and he said, "You're now a member of the gang." I called my agent and he goes, "Oh, you can't believe anybody." But 2 months later, they called off. I went to Mexico. And so that was the beginning of sort of the run.
Mm-hmm.
I did that, and then immediately after that, I got Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and then Alien came along. It just was sort of like everything just went on a roll. When I was a kid, I did the Children's Hour, and then I did the Bergs, and then I did Spencer's Mountain, and that was the same sort of a thing. You do one thing, and it just led to another and another. So
yeah,
it was great.
You're a utility player. Like, you're, as we said, like, you're a serviceable actor. You come in, you bring pathos, you often do this in like genre films, but you've also appeared like in a number of television shows. Recently, like, that includes Gotham Knights, The Rookie, Bosch, Sabrina, The Good Doctor, but you've also had memorable arcs on The X-Files, 6 Feet Under, Nip Tuck, ER, Grey's Anatomy. My question is, so many of these scenes, like in ER or on 6 Feet Under, you come in and you might have a few scenes, but you really have, like, in 6 Feet Under, you're like bawling at your daughter's funeral, and it's like you don't get a lot of setup for that. Like, how do you come into this well-oiled machine of a show and, I don't know, you get 1-2 chances to knock it out of the park? Like, how do you do that? How do you prepare for a day like that on set?
My character. I mean, I just study my character. I have sort of a biography for her, and I just sort of immerse myself in what she would do.
Do you drink a lot of water on those days when you know you're going to have to cry? Like, that, it just seems so intimidating to me.
At this point, I mean, no, I can, I don't have to think of, dogs dying or anything like that. I sort of discovered that when I was doing the Birds, that you just looked at the other person. I like the tent scene, the scene where the birds are all coming down the chimney. I just watched Jessica Tandy, and I mean, I was a total basket case. I realized that you can't do those things. They're not real. And you just sort of have to listen. Listening is like so major. I mean, just work off of the other person. I don't know. I don't know how I mean, when we did Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the end scene, Donald was told one thing, walked around with Philip, and they were talking, and then Philip took me, and we walked around the block, and we just talked, and told me what, was going to happen. And to sort of, so I had no idea. That's why I was so tentative when I showed up and blank-faced, as I said, Donald. I had no idea he was going to do that. And I just freaked. I don't know. It just came out, and that was one take, and I don't know. That's just what happened.
Well, can I ask, Anne, how many credits does Veronica have? We looked on IMDb.
I think it's like 157.
I know that you've worked with actors who maybe weren't listening or giving you. So how do you operate in that system when you're not necessarily acting opposite Jessica Tandy? You just have to do what you got hired to do?
Well, I guess. I don't know. I mean, okay, so I just did this movie, a little movie. Well, one movie I did in Maine. And it was a small movie, and it was sort of a very difficult part. It's a woman who's a classical conductor who's now sort of housebound due to arthritis and a bunch of other things. And it's a murder mystery that happens in the house. And this young girl, she's very, very good. She'd done one movie before, and our cinematographer he's just fabulous. Corey Korak, he's just done that Bob Marley movie. Mm-hmm. He was our cinematographer, and we had a great producer. Unfortunately, my director, he didn't know how to talk to actors. I mean, I blew up at one point because it's supposed to be this scene where I'm trying to stab this girl and she's hysterical and I'm hysterical and then I've sort of been chloroformed and all of this stuff. And it worked. But the next day he came in and said he wanted to have a different shot of the girl doing this. And Corey goes, well, that's not going to match. Unfortunately, the director was a little strange. And he goes, no, I've watched the footage. It'll match. Well, all of a sudden, this girl has to get in a position where she was the day before, where we were hysterical, and she was crying, and I was crying, and she was and so, I mean, I just screamed at him. I said, I was just beside myself. Anyway, I got the girl so shook up that she got, I figured I've got to do something in order to be able to get her to, this poor girl, into a place where she could just, and it worked. It worked, but it was like so hard. It was so mean that he would do that,
Right.
Whereas I just did this movie, Kill for a Kill, which I guess goes on Tubi, which I've never seen Tubi, but it was such a different experience with the same amount of time, with the director, Dylan Vox, who knew exactly what he wanted, how to get it from his actors, because he'd been an actor. I mean, I told the other, I'm not going to say his name, but sure. I told him he needed to take acting lessons. I said, you need to go and take acting lessons so you know how to talk to actors and tell them what you want. He couldn't even explain what he wanted. So, you just sort of had to know your character, delve into it, and make the other person watch you and look at you and respond to you. So, and whereas this other movie, I mean, we have a couple of really nasty scenes where I blow up at this girl because I think she's had my daughter commit suicide, and then I'm a horrible bitch. But then after we did the scene, and I broke down. I was so frustrated at this girl for not listening to me. I don't know. I think it worked. We'll see. I don't know. It's all you can do is listen and watch. I mean, I've done plays. And if you do plays, if you're not listening, you are up Schitt's Creek, because people can go up on their lines and then you have to bring them back, or, weave things in and out, or you can't do a play without watching the other person and listening. Right. So I think that's the big takeaway. And now I am doing the new Ted Danson series for Netflix.
Oh, hey. Can you tease anything about that?
Well, it's a half-hour sitcom called The Classic Spy. And we've only shot 2 episodes so far. It's based on The Mole Agent, which was a French documentary about a man who infiltrates an assisted living home to find out things that are going on. Are there dirty deeds, or are they not taking care of people, or are people stealing things? And then I tell you, it's so fun. It's really fun. I had such a great time. Netflix has now got it for a couple of weeks, and they nitpick, I guess, and then you go back in March and do more.
Okay, love.
I can't wait to see
That's
it.
exciting.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, we talked about some good and bad directors, but the fact is you've worked with a number of auteurs in your career. Hitchcock, of course, Ridley Scott, William Wyler with The Children's Hour, Philip Kaufman, also in The Right Stuff, Bill Condon, and Todd
Bill.
Field.
I just saw Bill the other night. He was in Musso and Frank's. I love Bill. I've worked with Bill 3 times. He's just darling.
Kinsey, Candyman. What's the third project?
Dead in the Water, which was a movie of the week, which is hysterical. It's with Brian Brown, and I play this rich older woman that is determined to get him, and Poor thing has to have sex with me all the time. And I mean, garter belts, and then I have golfing things, and oh my God, it's hysterical.
Love.
It was just so much fun to do, and fabulous clothes. And they did my hair. My hair was red at the time, and they did my hair like Arlene Dahl, and it sort of went off to the side. And we were on a golf course, and it was windy that day. And my hair moves as one big piece, just back and forth. Terry Hatcher was in it. Oh, it's just a fun, silly thing. That was my first thing I did with Bill. And then I did Kinsey and Candyman. Yeah, Kinsey, was the last thing I did with Bill.
So maybe he's the answer to this question, but like, is there a director that you've worked with that you feel like really gets you, has a specific language for your talents and able to bring out the best in you?
Oh, I'd say Phil Kaufman definitely does. I mean, after doing Invasion of the Body Snatchers, we had one very difficult scene in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The thing about talking about apes and them coming down, and that whole scene of in the living room, why do we have to think of them always coming in metal ships? It was a bitch of a scene. I mean, and Donald Sutherland decided that he was going to have curly hair for this piece. So every day he would get his hair set in pink rollers, permanent rods all over his head so that he would have curly hair. So it was a difficult scene, and we're doing all of these rehearsals, and here's Donald with his curlers in his hair. And it just took some time, and I said to Phil, it needs to be something where we're interrupting each other. It needs to be something where we're talking on top, so that I am the one who comes and says, why do they have to be like monkeys and apes, or one of those things. I can't remember the exact dialogue. And he let me do that, which was great, because he wasn't getting it. And I knew what I needed to be able to get there. Yeah. And I went and asked him if we could try it. And I talked to the other actors, and they said, sure. And we just, all of a sudden, it all came together. So Donald went and took his pink curlers out, and we did it. God damn it.
You guys are all so good together. I can't speak highly enough about it. But also, couldn't he have just gotten a perm instead of having to be in hair and makeup every day?
Well, the last 2 weeks of the movie, he decided to, because it was hard doing it with. He didn't want to do a perm because he was afraid it would ruin his hair.
Oh my gosh, Donald.
So he had it curled in the morning and curled at lunch. And finally, at the end, he says, oh, just give me a perm. Well, we were almost finished with the damn movie by the time he decided to get the perm. Oh, it's so silly. He's just a riot, that guy. He's so fun. He's just a wacko.
Yeah, he makes very interesting, strange, but like grounded choices, but they're always a little off, which I love.
Yes. Well, he's a little off. He's just totally got this sort of wicked side of him that's just, I mean, he did all that running down the stairs, and everybody's heart was in their throat because he's like running down the stairs, but his legs are going in every direction, and he's kind of clumsy. So, I mean, everybody was panicked that he was going to fall, but he didn't. And I was the slowest one going down those stairs of anybody.
That would have been me too. You got to respect the body.
I don't know. I've been really lucky with them. And then, of course, I did the right stuff with Phil. And Phil was, again, he says to the costumer, listen to her. She knows the right costume. I mean, it was just so, I've had a lot of really good people. And like Bill and Phil. And it just makes it exciting when it's like that. And they know what they're asking and how to get you there. And it's such a pleasure when you have that.
Well, Veronica, as we mentioned, you got your start as a child actor, and you appeared in films like The Children's Hour and The Birds, and on iconic television shows like Leave It to Beaver and Hitchcock Presents and The Twilight Zones and Daniel Boone. Have you had to approach the work differently throughout the years, or are you still able to tap into that skill set that made you like a really gifted young actor?
Well, I mean, you were just yourself, like on Leave It to Beaver and stuff like that. When I first clicked into not thinking of somebody else or anything, was doing the birds, standing there, and I thought, well, this is ridiculous. I mean, that's when I first realized, because when I did the children's hour, that scene where I had the big breakdown, I had sort of a guy a Frank White guy. We used to go to him for sort of little dramas and plays and stuff like that when we were kids. And whenever I'd get a big part or to audition for or get, I would work on it with him. And then his partner was Bill Lockwood. And he did all of the musicals and stuff like that and our singing lessons and things. So when I got the children's hour, I auditioned for 5 different parts in that movie.
Oh, my God.
And one of the big auditions was Mary, for Mary.
They should have given it to you. Karen is that character is interesting.
Well, those days they shot it, on film. And you went in, there was a full crew, your auditions and everything like that. So I went in and I had to do this audition for this big scene that Mary's telling her grandmother that she saw us kissing and stuff like that. Well, I'm doing the scene with this wonderful actress. I can't remember what her name was. She was kind of famous. William Wyler just had somebody who was good to come in and read the grandmother with you. Well, while I'm doing the scene, all of a sudden, there's this huge bang. And I thought, oh, I didn't know it was during the wartime. So I just kept going. I just assimilated that this was supposed to be during the war, and therefore I, just kept going. Well, he'd shot a gun off. Part of his thing to see what people would do, like most people stopped. A lot of kids went, "What's that?" or turned around, and I just thought, I just adjusted. I don't know what made me think it was during the wartime and the bombs were going off, but that's what I did, and I think that's what got me the part of Rosalie. And then when we did that big scene, it was very hard. You did it, and then they said, okay, let's do it again. And so you did it again. And then he says, okay, now we're filming it. So you went a little further. And then he turned to the cinematographer and goes, now film it. At which point, I flipped out. I was not acting. It was something else. It was another realm. And I thought, as I finished the scene, Shirley MacLaine came over and grabbed me, and she goes, oh, that's wonderful, honey. And then she said, get her a dressing room, because our dressing rooms were up in the sky over there. And those were the days when they had plywood boxes on wheels, that for dressing rooms. And I was leaving going, I hate that man. I hate that man. I just thought, I was totally hysterical. They put me in Faye Bainter's room, and they had me lie down, and they brought me ice packs, and I was a mess. It was in a different realm. So I thought, well, next time, you got to be careful about that. You better get there before they do that to you. So that was sort of the beginning, and then when the reason I got the birds, I went in to meet Hitchcock, and it was because he had seen the children's hour, so... Also, I was born in Bristol, and that's where he stored all his wine.
He wanted to talk to a young actor about that.
He gave me a list of great wines. Of course, I was 12, so I didn't pull out my notebook and say, could you repeat that, please?
Right.
And then he told me how to cook a steak, because I would need to know that when I got married someday.
He's full of great tips.
Great tips. I would have tea with him on the set. He was just terrific to me. Never intimidating at all, asked as many questions as I wanted. He'd let me hang out while he told dirty jokes, and then I'd go home and tell my aunt, because Jesus Christ. Or my mother. My mother had heart failure a couple of times, so I just told my aunt.
Right. You got to keep her healthy. So you were in The Birds, obviously directed by Alfred Hitchcock, but you also were in a few episodes of Alfred Hitchcock Presents, including one with your sister, Angela Cartwright, who, for those of you who don't know, went on to play Brigitte in The Sound of Music. So did you give her any tips about like, hey, I've worked with Hitch, this is how it's going to go?
Oh, no, those were way before.
It?
Those were before The Birds.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
1960 was the Schwartz-Metterklume method, and then I did another one where I was a witch, and I was tied to a. No, that was not that witch. It was a different witch. I was.
The other one was. Oh no, that was the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, I did the Twilight Zone. I sang the
Mm-hmm.
Body Electric. That was the only one that Ray Bradbury had written.
Very good.
Yeah, I tell you, I've had some experiences.
Absolutely.
I did one when I was 15 and a half. I was doing Daniel Boone at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I had auditioned for The Sound of Music with my sister. We had matching outfits. We auditioned a couple of times together, but I didn't get it. Heather Menzies got that part. And so when they went over to Austria, before we left, and I didn't get the part, Michael MacLaine, who was the casting man, said, I have you in mind for something. And so when we were over in Austria, and they let me go too because it was going to be for several months over there so we could do the schooling and stuff, I got a call while I was over there to come back to play Jemima Boone on the Daniel Boone show. And we shot that in Kanab, Utah. So I was like 15 and a half, and then I did that for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So
did you and your sister talk shop a lot growing up, since you guys were both pretty successful professional young actors?
Well, we did an awful lot of parades. My sister says I'm going to write a book one day called My Life is a Parade. And I was always tagging along. I felt like I was tagging along because she was on Danny Thomas' show and stuff like that. But, it was... I did movies and stuff, and she was on Danny Thomas for 7 years. Mm-hmm. And then she was in Lost in Space, and then she did Make Room for Daddy. So she was always on TV stuff. And, my mom took her to work. My aunt took me to a lot of things, and we had another lady when our tap dance teacher's mother she used to go with me too.
Okay, Veronica, you are in The Witches of Eastwick opposite Cher, Michelle Pfeiffer, Susan Sarandon, and Jack Nicholson. And let me tell you, you give the standout performance for us. You have two extremely wild, memorable scenes. One where you fall down the stairs and your bone is exposed, and two where you vomit up buckets of cherry pits. What can you tell us about this insane movie, the practical effects, and your brilliant full-body performance?
Well, I auditioned for it in Boston. They had me go back to Boston and audition. And the book, apparently, it was the book, I read the book, but the woman was so much older and sort of a religious fanatic. Mm-hmm. So I went back and auditioned, but Colleen Dewhurst had auditioned for it.
Oh my God.
These different people had auditioned for that part. Anyway, I went in for my audition, and first off, they called and they said, can we push you back a half an hour? Now, you're in a hotel room. You're dressed in your Anne Taylor outfit that you've gone out special to get to be this character.
Right.
And all of a sudden, you're going over everything. You know what scenes you've got to do. And then they ask you if you'd wait another half an hour. I mean, oh my God, it was just awful. It was just awful. Anyway, I go in, and there's George and Richard Jenkins, who plays my husband in the movie, who is just the most divine actor ever. So the scenes were the snowy egret scene, where will they nest? And the other scene, Richard read with me, was the throwing up scene, the cherry scene. So I said to them, well, how far would you like me to go on this? And George says, we'd like to see you do it. So I said, okay. So I did. And I was doing vomiting and all sorts of, Jesus Christ. That was my audition. I was a mess when I left. And the Richards, they both looked at each other when I left. She said, everybody had said, well, I'll do it on the day when we do it. And you come in here, you were gagging and chewing all of this shit and feeling yourself up and carrying on. And they said, they both just looked at each other, well, that's it. I mean, now I had no idea, but Jack, I found this out after I got it and I was signing my contract. And George said, you know, you have a huge fan in Jack. He's the one who insisted that we see you for this part because he felt that she is the fourth witch. She is the witch that knows that he is the devil. And why she goes insane is because he doesn't want them to know that he's the devil. And so they make me go through all of these things.
I like that interpretation. That's
Isn't
cool.
Isn't that good? It's a great interpretation. So
you're selling me on Jack Nicholson a bit, honestly, because he has good taste, knowing that you should be in the film.
He's just divine. I love Jack. He's great. I did Going South with him and that. And then years later, I did that movie, oh God, what is it, with Ellen Barkin, Man Trouble.
Right.
You know, which... Mm-hmm. I think that was getting a lot of people together that had all done 5 easy pieces and, you know, oh my God. And we were supposed to be opera singers and carrying on and singing. We actually took lessons. I took lessons and, I mean, we learned to sing that song and we had a whole back and we sang in front of the music at the music center. And David Clennon was the conductor, and he'd been taking conducting classes. And at the end, they said, why don't you just do it? And we did it. We did the whole piece live. It was incredible. What an experience. It was just, thank God there were backup singers. But we were these, doing all this stuff. It was great. I mean, it was hysterical. But, yeah, it wasn't a very good movie, but it was fun. It was fun. And my best scene was cut out, but what can I say? You know.
Okay, Veronica Cartwright, we have entered the part of the show we call rapid fire. What we say is rapid for us. You can take your time if you need to, but we're just throwing stuff at you. We have everything else we need to get in before we say our goodbyes. Okay. You have an incredible cameo in the second Scary Movie film where you get to show off your vocal chops singing Hello, Dolly, one of my all-time favorite musical. Your character is sort of a parody of the Ellen Bernstein role in The Exorcist. This movie is obviously a broad comedy, but did you approach any of your scene work, like i.e. like hitting your daughter into the puddle of pee, any differently than you would if it was a straightforward horror film?
No, I mean, you have to make it real. So I just approached it as if it was a real thing. Everything needed to be over the top. The Hello, Dolly, I had to audition for that at a very old building in Highland and Hollywood Boulevard.
Wait, they made you sing for the audition?
Oh, yes. And I guess Damon was on the other line or I mean, I don't know. But
Keenan Ivory Wayans?
Keenan was on that because they kept saying, all right, now make it bigger. I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, how big do I have to... By the end, bigger. Hello! I am doing all of this stuff. I come out, and there's a UPS man standing there, just looking in shock.
It's amazing. I want to see you do Dolly Levi now. I'm ready for it.
It was fun. It was really fun. And then singing that rap song.
Oh, right. Because then it transitioned. Yeah.
It was so nasty. It was really fun. But no, I approached it just like I would anything else. And I mean, it was just bigger.
So I have to admit that I first became aware of you thanks to your role as Cassandra Spender on The X-Files. You play the mother of Jeffrey Spender, the ex-wife of the iconic cigarette-smoking man. Your character is what fans of The X-Files call part of the myth arc of the show, i.e. not one of the standalone episodes.
The conspiracy theories. There's 13 of them. There's actually a tape deck of it. Sorry.
No. I as somebody that has seen every single episode of the show and knows that there's you're an alien human hybrid, there's abduction, colonization, vaccine, black oil, all of it is still extremely convoluted, even when you know the details. Did they hand you a show Bible when you walked onto set to say, like, here's how you make sense of this? Or did you just, like, show up and shoot from the hip?
Well, I had that chip in the back of my head, just like Scully had. And so I know that she had been abducted at the same time. That's why. And there is actually a hospital in Boston that these people that feel that they have an experienced outer limit stuff, they go there because not a lot of people think they're crazy and discuss what they have seen. When I first got up to Vancouver, I had a meeting with Chris Carter. And we were just talking about the different kinds of aliens there are. I mean, these have been documented. There's the gold ones, the ones that are like, Jeff Bridges and Starman. I said, well, I could go for that one. That would be good. And then there's the grays, which have all been sort of documented in all different movies. And then there's the dark ones that do the oil. So, I mean, and these have all been documented. So actually he was just, writing from that. And he said to me, do you believe in aliens? And my response was, they all look like Jeff Bridges, absolutely. But I do. How selfish of us to believe that we are the only humans. I mean, or the only species that can survive. It just doesn't make any sense. It's so selfish of us to think that that's what it is. So, I don't know. The second time when I'm talking and I'm walking again, because now they've sort of done something to me up there, and I'm now walking and discussing the oil and sort of informing them of what is going to happen if something isn't taken control of. And I don't know, I just approached it like any other thing and just believed it, I guess.
You're such an important part of the X-Files world. Also Emmy nominated for that role. So good.
She was just great. I really thought that I had won the Emmy, I must say. I had even prepared a speech, but I didn't.
Fuck whoever won. We don't even know who won. We have no knowledge of who won. In our books, Veronica Cartwright won that year.
I was nominated for ER as well.
Yes, and you were also excellent in that opposite Clea Duvall and George Clooney. You were really giving.
Oh, thanks, Clea. Yes, lovely Clea. I did win an Emmy, though, when I was, 15, for Tell Me Not Harmful Numbers, which was a special that was done.
I tried desperately. We did everything we could to try to find it, but I couldn't find footage of it where you only speak in numbers.
Yeah, she speaks in numbers, and it was actually a true case. It was based on a girl who was actually in the movie.
Oh.
Just as swinging on a swing. We shot it in 2 days on the weekend. We had to use the studios where they do the news. She spoke only in numbers. And she would draw these incredible pictures. Her brother being a scared baby rabbit, and she thought of herself as being Moe in the Three Stooges. She had her hair cut straight across in a bowl cut. Looked just, and she would base all of her numbers on a deck of Three Stooges cards. So the numbers that were on the cards, she in her mind would relate like Curly's poking somebody's eyes out, and that would be that sort of number. It was they had to break down her entire system of what it was. And as she got better, her drawings started to go away. She couldn't draw very well anymore. It was fascinating. It was really interesting. Plus, they let me listen to tapes of some of her things. She would, whinny like a horse and stamp around and do all of these very, very bizarre things, which was really good for Witches of Eastwick when I did that. It was like it came full circle. All of a sudden, here you are. You're doing what that girl had done. So I was on KTTV And it wasn't national because they missed 2 stations to whatever. So,
Yeah.
no, I that's gone, I guess. Same thing with another thing I did, which was called Who Has Seen the Wind, which I'm really amazed that they didn't release. Remember when there was the whole thing with the refugees and boats going back and forth?
Mm-hmm.
This was called Who Has Seen the Wind, and it was about refugees on a boat. The cast was just phenomenal. It was Maria Schell and Stanley Baker and Theodore McKell, Edward G. Robinson, Leah Scala. I mean, all of these incredible people. Now, somehow my dad got a copy of the film. I should go and have it made into a thing.
Was Gypsy Rose Lee in that?
I don't know if she was.
I think she was.
She was? Maybe.
I think so.
I wonder if it's at the Paley Center. We should see if we can dig it up because I feel like, you know, they always try to tell you everything's on the internet, but it isn't.
Yeah, and Edith Head was the costumer.
Ugh.
She was colorblind. And when you go up to her studio, she had all of these old sewing machines with red bobs of thread on them, which was kind of fascinating, I thought.
That is wild.
I had to do a scene where I take a shower on the boat. So she, set me up with a thong and pasties, and I couldn't wear a bra, so she wanted to make sure I felt comfortable. She lined like the little dress I wore and stuff like that. And
okay, nice.
she was very helpful. Of course, they gave me brand new shoes. Marachis, because I had to go down. I had a robe to go down to do this shower scene. And I took one step. They had watered down the steps of the ship, which was 3 miles out. And I slipped and slipped all the way down and landed on the pole, the bottom. It knocked me out. It was, the director was George Stevens, and he had been a doctor, and he just got me and took me over, and the Mexican doctor sitting there looking at my pussy, so to speak, was just she was in shock. I could not close my legs. It was just, it was my body.
Oh, that's so
they
painful.
Gave me something Valium. My mom was with me, and my teacher, my mom and his sister, that I have a teacher, and here we are in, Mexico. And they put me on a speedboat and took me back, and the doctor was there at the other end, and he said nothing was broken, but my best bet was to go swimming and the salt water heal it.
Oh, God.
That was fine. So I did that. And then we go back out a week later to shoot that scene. Well, I get under the shower and the pasties just dropped off. And I thought, oh, the hell with this. As everybody's already seen everything anyway. What difference does it make? So that was my first nude scene at 15.
Oh, my God.
I know. Daniel Boone on one end and hiatus taking showers on a boat.
Oh, my God. So, Veronica, you played like a repressed lesbian agent to like a Rock Hudson-like movie star in the 2004 StraightJacket. Which,
wasn't that hysterical?
I love it so much, and it parallels Rock Hudson at the height of his career, but it's a big, broad comedy. Since you grew up in the industry, were you ever privy to any sort of like arrangements like that in old Hollywood?
Well, I knew there was an arrangement with Rock Hudson.
Was that sort of an open secret?
Probably. It probably was. Richard Chamberlain, wasn't he? He was also.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And what was it? Troy Donahue
Mm-hmm.
was, but nobody ever treated it that way. I don't know about George Maharis. I did a Route 66 right before I did the Birds. And when I was doing the Birds, I had to get a hepatitis shot because he had come down with hepatitis. So, of course, there were shots, these penicillin shots they had to give you in your ass, and which according to body weight, and the needle looked like it was that long. I thought, oh, my God. So I had it on both sides, and I go back to the set on the birds, and here's this prop man walking around with a down pillow. And every time I went to sit down, he'd shove this pillow under my ass. That was Hitchcock's little joke. That went on all day because he had asked that I don't do that show, and we did it because he was afraid I wouldn't be able to be in Santa Rosa by the time they started shooting the birds. But they got me there, or I was there in Santa Rosa on the day that I had to. And this was a movie where at one point we were in a big field. I was supposed to be a witch. I was playing Tuesday Weld as a child. And they had me tied to a tree, and a big bull comes out. And here I am, and they're going, "Don't move." Well, I'm tied to a tree, and all the camera and everybody all over there. And a big bull comes walking through. I thought, oh my God, this is ridiculous. So eventually the bull moseyed on, and they were able to untie me from the tree. But oh my God, that was a kind of an experience that day.
Okay, last question. On your IMDb, your role in Speed is listed as Bag Lady Uncredited. What the hell is that about?
For what show?
Speed.
I was never in Speed.
They have you as uncredited in Speed.
I wasn't in Speed. I never did.
Okay, we have to correct the record. Correct the record.
Yes, they do, because I was never in Speed, and there's another one they have me in the bedroom.
Oh yeah, it says you're like the minister on TV screen or something.
No, I am not. It was a voiceover. I was a woman on a radio. I'm not in. They used my name.
Did you get paid for In the Bedroom?
No.
Did Todd Field pay you?
Oh, well, all I got paid was for doing the, ADR.
I just need to make sure you're getting your residuals for your ADR or whatever you did.
No, you don't get residuals for ADR.
Veronica, I just want to make sure.
No, I wasn't in that. And my friend who lived in Toronto, she says, "I'm going to the Toronto Film Festival tonight to see you in the bedroom." And I said, "But I'm not in the bedroom." That was awful, because they used my name as a big lure.
That's BS.
That is
not
BS.
into that.
That was nasty.
Well, we'll email IMDb about Speed and say you were not in it.
I wasn't in Speed. I'd love to have been in Speed, but I wasn't. What was I supposed to have been? One of the women on the bus?
It says Bag Lady Uncredited.
Bag Lady Uncredited.
I'm going to look at yours. Well, for our listeners, your website is an incredible archive of all of your work. So maybe we'll go back and we'll see you actually clocked in one day for Speed.
Well, if anybody can find me in Speed, let me know.
Veronica Cartwright, this has been a total pleasure. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you.
I was obsessed with three things about Veronica Cartwright. Number one, her singing Hello Dolly in Scary Movie 2. What a find. I mean, this podcast continues to be the gift that keeps on giving, because I maybe never would have watched Scary Movie 2 if we didn't land the interview with Veronica Cartwright. And then I got to see that moment and I was like, oh my God, Veronica, you can sing. Number two, her talking about her having to cut her hair in Alien because Sigourney Weaver wouldn't do it, and then she had to do it, and then how Liza Minnelli had a similar short do in the 70s that then became chic. And I was like, it was so funny, and also bringing it back to Liza.
Such a great tie-in. And I feel like the thing we love about this show is that, for me, I grew up and the first thing I saw her in was The X-Files as Cassandra Spender. And I thought, wow, this actor is so for me. And then however many years later, 24, 25 years later, getting to meet her over Zoom and chat and have this conversation where I then explored her entire oeuvre. Invasion of the Body Snatchers fucked me up. That movie was so fucking good. I was like, I wish I had seen this in the theaters for the first time. I was obsessed with it. Inserts with the disgusting Richard Dreyfuss, obsessed. She was giving, I think, a performance for the ages, and it's a hard movie to find, but I promise you it's worth it. I'll put it in the show notes. But if you have time to watch Inserts, I really think it's a revelation. It's also X-rated, which is always fun to go back and see what was X-rated in previous eras. I just thought that she she had one of the most sprawling, iconic careers of anyone that we've spoken with, just in hit after hit after hit after hit parade. Like, seems like so many of the films that she's been in are going to be in the Library of Congress, like, for being so influential. It's kind of incredible. And I just want to see more of her. She is for us.
Completely. And the third thing I was obsessed with is exactly what you're saying, which was that she was in The Children's Hour. I mean, she was in The Birds as well, which she's excellent in. But The Children's Hour was a film I had never seen, and it is so gay.
Yeah,
and I was like, I can't believe this movie was made when it was made. And it comes back to our earlier conversation about time feeling like closer together. Like, it's not, I don't know that they ever say that they're, I don't know that they ever use the word lesbian. I can't remember, but I don't think so. But it is not subtle. Like, it is about these two. It's about Shirley MacLaine and Audrey Hepburn alleged to have a relationship. And Veronica Cartwright is sort of like a cog in the like rumor mill that is happening as a child. Anyway, I just was like really taken with the length of her career, as you said, and getting to do all of these things. And I love that she has carved out this space, I think, not only in queer projects, as we discussed, but also in genre projects.
Yes.
I think that so often, you know, like, women don't get great roles in genre, or they are like not, you know, it's like they don't get taken seriously. And she's a good actor who grounds sometimes bananas things. And that, to me, it seems like the most fun stuff to do as an actor.
Yes, so chewy, so good. If you haven't seen The Witches of Eastwick, please make sure you make it through to her scenes, because they are some of my favorite ever put to film. Jesus, I can't believe we had Veronica Cartwright on the show. Like, a really good Pride episode.
Anne has been angling us to have Veronica Cartwright on since the show began because of her like two huge scenes in The Witches of Eastwick, which I had never seen. And so I was so pleased for us to watch together and see like her incredible, you know, like rubber-faced work. I don't want to say anything else. Well, I guess we said in the interview, but anyway, just, you should watch it if you haven't.
Folks, thank you so much for joining us this month. If you haven't already, please take a moment to pause whatever you're doing and leave us a 5-star review on the Apple Podcast app. It's the best thing you can do. If you've already done it, please find a friend and have them do it on our behalf. Find your hookup for the week, for the night, your dance partner, your nemesis, like whatever you need to do. Put a 5-star review in the Apple Podcast app. That'll help us so much. Please and thank you. You can, of course, find us on all social media at Damian Bellino and at Rodeman. That's RODEMANNE. And if you want a little bit more, follow us at You Might Know Her From on Instagram and TikTok.
Folks, the best way to stay in touch, the best way to get more of what you're listening to right now is to join us on our Patreon. That's patreon.com/You Might Know Her From. You can also go to Patreon and search You Might Know Her From, and you'll find us there. There you'll get special episodes with just me and Anne. You'll get our monthly newsletter. You'll get episodes where we interview people like Barry, who we're talking about La G with.
Like our Poseidon Adventure rewatch, where we dive in deep on that. Please make sure that you go find us on Patreon. It's where we get to put all the nitty gritty, all the things we can't say on the paper of record. I'm calling our podcast the podcast of record. This is the main feed. This is the OG, the original recipe, as Damian calls it. But if you want the deep cuts, you've got to go to patreon.com.
You Might Know Her From is produced by us. That's Ann Rodeman and Damian Bellino. We also want to thank our consultants at Grumpy Entertainment, Jason Jude Hill and Daniel Sears, and all that smooth, pristine editing is also done by the incredible and generous and very kind Daniel Sears.
Special thanks to Gang. All the music that you hear on every episode of You Might Know Her From is courtesy of Gang. You can find Gang wherever you listen to your music.
Also, folks, do you know that there's this thing called show notes? You can find them underneath each and every episode description of You Might Know Her From. My cohort, Anne, here is obsessed with archives. So she is archiving every single little thing that we mention willy-nilly here. Click into those show notes and make Anne's work not in vain. Okay, I just started watching Clipped, and I need you to start watching Clipped on Hulu. It stars Lawrence Fishburne, it stars Ed O'Neill, and most importantly, it stars Jackie Weaver. It's about like that drama that happened with the LA Clippers several years ago where audio leaked of the owner of the Clippers
saying like really racist, awful things.
Yes, and also then like I also realized that the woman who leaked that stuff, who he was in a relationship, is also that woman who's in that Barbara Walters interview where she says, like when Barbara Walters is like, what were you to him? And the woman goes, I was the silly rabbit. That is the woman who leaked the audio. There's this unknown actress from Australia who is playing the character. I did not know who she was, but I am all on board for Cleopatra Coleman and Jackie Weaver. I'm like, okay, Cleopatra Coleman getting an Emmy win for saying silly rabbit opposite I don't know who, playing Barbara Walters. Also, you know what is great? Harriet Sanderson Harris shows up for... She's in 2 scenes with like 1 line each, but you know what? She's always grounding, and also she's always weird. And you know what we love here? We like actors who make weird, specific, big choices. She's not really making big choices. They're quite small, but she still has like a voice that is, you know, you can't help but recognize Harriet Harris's voice. She and Vianne Cox, I need them to be on stage together doing something. What's the piece for them, Anne? And how do we match?
They need a two-hander. There's so few two-handers. There's Deuce. And what else do we
True
have?
West.
The gin game. What True West? Let's do True West. Let's do a gender-flipped True West.
Prelude
Perfect,
to a
done.
Kiss.
Yes.
No,
done.
not Prelude to it. Stop Kiss.
Stop Kiss. That ends in tragedy, though. So I feel like let's give them... I don't actually know how Deuce ends. They could do the gin game. That probably also ends in tragedy.
What's the one with the Laura that we were trying to tell?
Oh, The Little Foxes, also a Lillian Hellman original.
They both play high class a lot, though.
Yes, they both play high class, uptight,
and they're both like red-ish.
Very well.
Yeah,
they're both so good. I need them. I mean, they could do 3 sisters. Who's the third? Who would we cast opposite the two of them?
I don't know enough about those character archetypes, but I'm trying to think of like another person like them. That's a fun game. Let's think about that for a moment while let's end
TikTok
when we get to the person.
Okay, I'm thinking there like. Who has that? The only person I can see in my face is Florence Welch, and that's not helpful. I'm trying to find a redheaded actress. There's very few. I could put Jessie Buckley in that territory as like a younger version, but like it's not really close.
Yeah, she's not as.
She's also not American, and I feel like we need an American.
She's also like not as like.
She plays low class.
Yeah, and exactly. She's not as fancy as they both, I think, really portray. Is Judith Ivey dead?
I think Judith Ivey is dead.
God bless.
Dana Ivey is alive.
Is Eileen Heckert dead?
Judith Ivey is still alive. I'm so sorry. Judith Ivey is still alive. I feel like Dana Ivey, when she was like Addams Family era, would have been in the same community. Do you know what I mean? Like she was up for those same roles. Maybe
Christine Estabrook.
I know, but like I think the thing that we're seeing that's similar about Vianne and Harriet is that they're both like tall and long, and I feel like Estabrook is a shorter woman. So who has that long, lean? Like Nicole Kidman is a strawberry blonde, and also like not.
Siobhan Fallon.
Like
She's short.
And also usually plays working
Cynthia
class.
Nixon?
I feel like I think we're in a closer territory, but still.
Like Cynthia Nixon is playing Vianne Cox in Cinderella on The Gilded Age.
Yes. But slightly more simple. I like, is there a dearth of redheaded actresses? I was like, is this what we're getting at? Like, who plays haughty, like, is it Elizabeth McGovern? She's not really a redhead, but I think of her as being in that. Your face.
I don't think Elizabeth McGovern is the choice that you're thinking.
Okay. So the other redheads I'm thinking
Penelope
of Juliette
Miller?
Nicholson. She's not a redhead. She's a blonde.
Like blonde now.
To me, I think it's not the right vibe. I can only think of
Deborah Messing. That's all you could think of.
Oh my God. The fall of Deborah Messing has been so huge for me. Remember when one of the best nights of my life was seeing Birthday Candles with you on stage? That was a highlight.
Do you remember like when we had maybe not you, but I like had tears rolling down my cheek because we were laughing at her?
I might have an answer. Marcia Cross.
Oh!
I'm not like it's not perfect. I don't think it's perfect, but it's pretty good. I feel like it's the best we found.
Let's end there. You did it. You did it. Great job.
Send us options. Send us redhead options. Thank you.